Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you a film, Harakiri. The film's story is set in Japan in the year 1630. At this time, society has entered a state of peace, and the samurai class that relied on major clans during the period of warfare gradually declined. Many samurais, left without a master to rely on, became ronin, living extraordinarily difficult lives. During this period, many ronin appeared, pretending to request harakiri, but in reality, they were only looking to garner some sympathy to obtain money. The film Harakiri that I'm going to talk about today begins here. On a hot afternoon, a ronin comes to the door of a local noble family, the Tu family. He came today intending to request an audience with the lord of the house. The master of the house is not in, and the steward manages various tasks at home. After hearing the servant's report, he decided to meet this ronin. The ronin met with the steward and simply explained his intentions. He said he was once a samurai, but now he cannot live honorably and requests to commit harakiri here today. The steward was somewhat suspicious, but also felt a little regretful, so he asked the ronin if he would like to hear the story of another ronin. After receiving an affirmative answer, the steward began to tell the story. 4 months ago, a young ronin named Frank also came here to request harakiri. The steward and his retainers had heard many similar cases recently. These samurai pretend to come for harakiri, but actually, they want to receive some alms. To stop this trend from spreading further, the retainers unanimously decided to make an example. So they informed the young man that the master had agreed to see him. Frank was delighted and looking forward to meeting the master. But what awaited him was an order to commit harakiri today. He was terrified and said that he needed to see the master first. But the retainer told him that the master admired his courage, had already agreed to his request for harakiri, and there was no need to meet. The young man was very scared and got up to start running away. But there were angry samurais everywhere blocking his way. With no other choice, he asked to go back and say goodbye to his wife and then return to commit harakiri. But the response he got was a stern command to commit suicide now. In this way, this poor young man was taken to the place of harakiri. When they inspected the samurai sword he carried, they found it was a sword made of bamboo. Such conduct, which humiliates the spirit of Bushido, must be severely punished. They decided to let this young man commit harakiri with his bamboo sword. The young man, pressured by everyone, fell into utter despair. He took the bamboo sword and performed harakiri. The immense pain was unbearable, and he finally committed suicide by biting his tongue. The steward's story ends here. He hoped to tell the visiting ronin through this story that this is not a place to spread money and sympathy. If you don't want to lose your life, give up the bad idea as soon as possible. The ronin listened very calmly to the steward's words, indicating that he had made up his mind and would not regret it. Seeing that persuasion was ineffective, the steward arranged a harakiri ceremony for him. The ronin was brought to the harakiri site, where he sat cross-legged in the center of the field, appearing very calm. Before starting the harakiri, he made a request to choose a second. The so-called second refers to the person standing by his side to end his pain when the samurai commits harakiri. To reduce the pain caused by harakiri, the second usually directly cuts off the head of the person committing harakiri. The ronin said the first name, Jimmy. Regrettably, Jimmy happened to be sick in bed today. At his repeated requests, the steward sent someone to invite Jimmy to come to the scene. During this waiting time, the ronin asked the steward and the samurais present if they were interested in hearing his story. He said that perhaps someone could gain some truth from his story. Seeing the ronin, who was about to commit harakiri under the scorching sun, could still tell stories calmly. The steward greatly admired his courage and perseverance and gladly accepted the proposal. So the Ronin began to tell his story. It turns out that this Ronin is called Charlie. He was once a samurai of another noble family. More than 10 years ago, the master's family fell into ruin and committed suicide at home. And his best friend also chose to follow the master and commit harakiri. Before his death, his best friend wrote a will, instructing Charlie to take good care of his son. His son is the Frank mentioned earlier. Since then, Charlie has been wandering with his daughter and his friend's son. As time went by, his daughter grew up. Despite the local nobles coming to propose marriage, he rejected them all. He decided to marry his daughter to his best friend's son, Frank. Upon hearing the name Frank, the steward's face underwent a significant change, but he did not interrupt the Ronin story. And so, the two young people got married. Soon they had their own child. At this point, the servant who had just gone to invite Jimmy returned with a message that Jimmy was bedridden with a serious illness and could not come to the scene. Upon hearing this, the Ronin proposed a second name, Jack, hoping he could serve as the second. Unfortunately, Jack was also not present today, reportedly also due to illness. The steward felt things were going awry. He recalled that the Frank mentioned in the Ronin story earlier was the one who was forced to commit harakiri with a bamboo sword 4 months ago. So he summoned a few retainers to discuss how to deal with it. Everyone unanimously decided that the Ronin should commit harakiri immediately, and the story must end here. But the Ronin refused to do so, saying he needed to finish his story before he could commit harakiri, otherwise he would resist at all costs, causing a lot of trouble for the steward. In the standoff, the steward eventually gave in. At the same time, he ordered the servant to find Jack, wanting to figure out what was going on. The Ronin continued to tell his story. Life did not get better as a result of the union of the two young people. Fate was playing tricks, the life of this family got worse and worse. Not only did the wife fall seriously ill, but the couple's child also fell ill. But the family could not afford to see a doctor. Everyone felt helpless. Frank heard that recently some samurai had pretended to commit harakiri and had obtained unexpected wealth. So he pretended to tell his father-in-law that he was going to borrow money from a friend he knew. But in reality, he came to the house of a local noble family to request harakiri, to arouse sympathy and get some money to treat the child. But he did not expect that his body would be sent back that night. His bamboo sword was thrown on the ground with him. In the following few days, the son died of illness, and the wife also died of depression. In the end, the family was left with only Charlie was the only one left. The Ronin story ended here. The steward's face twitched. He understood that the man in front of him came for revenge. At this time, the servant who had gone to invite Jack came back to report that Jack was also ill and could not come to the scene. The Ronin laughed out loud, saying he originally wanted to propose a third name, but he felt there was no need. Then he took out 3 samurai hair knots from his body and threw them on the ground. To distinguish them easily, he even wrote the names of the samurai on the hair knots. They were Jimmy, Jack, and Tom. After dealing with the funeral at home, he found the 3 samurai who had forced his son-in-law to commit suicide one by one. He dueled with them, and after winning, he cut off their hair knots. Today he came to commit harakiri, and successively requested these 3 samurai to be the kaishakunin. And none of them showed up. These people chose to feign illness at home to cover up their shame. And his son-in-law, Frank, in order to take his child to the doctor, even sold his samurai sword. The Ronin angrily questioned everyone present. 4 months ago, if only one person had asked the reason why Frank came here. If only one person had asked why he wanted to say goodbye to his wife and children before coming back to commit harakiri, there wouldn't have been such an outcome. He mocked, "Is this the Bushido spirit you speak of?" Faced with the Ronin's ridicule, the steward's face started to twitch. He was extremely angry. He ordered the samurai present to hack the Ronin who came to commit Harakiri to death. After a fight, the Ronin eventually fell to the multiple attackers, dying under their blades. Harakiri is a film by Japanese director Masaki Kobayashi. By exposing the hypocrisy of Bushido, it promotes the spirit of humanism. The story takes place in the 1630s. In the story, Frank tried to improve the condition of his poor family. First, he chose to work as a laborer with the lower-class civilians, disregarding his samurai status. Then he sold the samurai sword that symbolized his honorable status. In the end, to seek medical help for his child. He did not hesitate to behave in a way that violated the samurai code by begging for mercy. We can see a true human being in the samurai, Frank. Whereas those samurai who seem cold on the surface, even though they mouth off about justice and the samurai spirit, in the end, they will only shrink back at home, waiting for their hair to grow back before dreaming of being a samurai again. In the film, Masaki Kobayashi uses the techniques of flashbacks and insertions. The steward and Charlie each tell the story of the same character, stringing it together from different perspectives, forming the pulse of the entire film. Although it is a black-and-white film shot in the 1960s, at any time you watch it, it doesn't feel outdated. Masaki Kobayashi did not blindly promote the samurai spirit, but instead depicted a hypocritical samurai spirit in the film. This makes one ponder, what is Bushido? How should one choose when the rules of human nature and decency face a contradiction? Well, that's it for the movie shared today. Please write down your thoughts on this film in the comments section. If we're fortunate, see you next time.